Cool. Thank you very much. Welcome to another Snowflake user group. We've got a packed agenda for you all this evening. It's actually amazing to see how many people have turned out. You found the Mukuru head office. Hope you enjoyed all the refreshments, food, you're ready to go. We've got a great presentation from the Mukuru guys this evening. In terms of our agenda, let me just get my little clicker to work. In terms of our agenda this evening, always a technical issue. Cool. So I'm going to welcome those who have, this is their first time to the user group. Got a few updates about the user group, some announcements, some upcoming events. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek or flavor of Snowflake's AI functions. We're on a bit of an AI mission tonight. And then we've got the guys from Mukuru who are going to talk to you about rethinking campaign analytics, talk to you about some of the cool Snowflake Intelligence things that they're building. And then, as always, keep your ears and eyes open. Quiz time at the end. Some amazing Snowflake merch. For those of you online, we've got some great pads. They're limited edition. And for the camper in you, we've got some cool camping mugs. And for the hikers, we've got a cool water bottle. Alrighty, let's crack on. Cool. So firstly, I just want to say thank you to Mukuru for sponsoring the venue this evening. It's really hard for us to find locations to run this. Obviously, we use Workshop 17 quite regularly, but it's great when we have sponsors who are willing to give up their space and their time to help us run these events. So that's very much greatly appreciated. And for actually putting the content together tonight to actually share with you some of the stuff that they're doing, real world use cases of how they're using Snowflake to drive change in their organization. So if you're new to the user group, then you've probably already signed up. If you haven't and someone brought you along, then you can scan that QR code. By the way, there's loads of QR codes at our event, so have your cameras at hand. Why are we here? So the whole idea of the user group is to build a community. We started off with about half a dozen people, and now we're up to well over 400 and something members. Typically, we're getting like 60 people plus to an event. And so these are your peers, so it's an opportunity for you to network with other people in your industry or in other industries who are obviously interested in tech and to find out how they're using Snowflake as a technology and just to have a general chit chat. It's to grow your professional network and it's to stay current. And hopefully that's what we're doing. And if we're not, then you should tell us because we don't want to waste your time and we don't want to waste our time. And we want to make sure that, you're getting the best out of giving up your afternoon. So my name's Douglas Day. I'm a director at a company called Data Lab. So we're Snowflake partners. We're heavily invested in the Snowflake ecosystem. And along with one of my co-directors, Riza, we've been running the user group for the last couple of years. And so we really love doing this. We love building community. We've run loads of different communities in the past. And we get quite a lot of reward out of just seeing so many people, interacting with each other. What do we ask for people to come and talk about? Anything basically related to Snowflake. So case studies, success stories, that's what you're going to hear today from Saad and his team at Mukuru. And they're going to tell you how they're going through the process. It's not something that's finished. It's about using the technologies innovatively. So it's doing really cool stuff. And it's all about best practices and lessons learned. So we're interested in not just the things that have gone well, but also the things that maybe haven't gone so well. So if you want to join the chapter, you can increase our numbers above 494. Then you can scan that QR code and you can help us meet our targets. Cool. So some updates on the user group. So if you were here at our last session, we've set ourselves some quite ambitious targets for the year. We want to grow the user group to 1,000 members across South Africa. We want to get 100 regular attendees, both in person and online. We want to run it in 2 locations. We're going to hold 10 events from February through to November, so one a month. And we hope to have 2 decent parties during that time as well. So how are we doing with our KPIs? So like any good manager, I'm going to keep myself accountable. And I'm going to tell you where we are. So where are we? So right now we're at 400, as of this afternoon, we're at 494 members in the user group. We've got 56 regular attendees on average. We're hosting it in one location, and by location I mean geography, so Cape Town for the time being, but we'll hold some events up in Johannesburg towards the end of the year. We've had 2 out of our 10 events and 0 parties, so we're not very good on the party front, but it's early in the year and we don't want to move too fast. We still need you to come to the next event. In terms of our trajectory, and that's a really faint line, but this is how we meet 1,000 members at the end of the year, and we're above our target at the moment, so we're growing at a nice steady pace. How are we going to try and build our community? So it's great that you come to these events, but if you have questions between now and the next event, what you're going to do. So what we'd like to encourage people to do is sign up and join the LinkedIn group. So we've got about 20 people, I think, in there at the moment. The idea is like for you to be able to communicate with each other, ask like questions, have people support you, and basically just try and build a community to make it a bit more interactive and not just a monthly thing where you just pitch up. So if you want to scan the QR code, you can. We have started already to put announcements on there. So we've got interesting things like we've got a YouTube channel. So every time we run one of these events, we're actually recording this as we go. And so we posted the last 3 events on the YouTube channel. So if you want to find out what some of the other interesting people have been doing, so the likes of Games Global, if you want to know what Bash have been doing, or who else have we had? Wonga, what they're doing with geospatial data, then you can go and rewatch those recordings. So please sign up for our YouTube channel. Again, we're looking for your feedback as we go through and do all of these things. So, like if there's things that you want us to do or that you've got good ideas, then please share them with us, because this, again, is a community-driven exercise. So where are we now in terms of our 10 events? We're in March, we're at the Mukuru office, and we were talking about campaign analytics. Our next event is in April. We will, I think in the next couple of days or early next week, publish that event on the user group channel. It's to be decided in terms of who's going to be presenting, but hopefully it's around data collaboration, but that might change as well. But don't let that be a deciding factor as to whether you come or not. If you want to present, if you've got something interesting, whether it's personally or for your company, please give us a shout. It would be much more interesting to hear from other people than from people like me. If you're interested, next week, there's Data for Breakfast in Johannesburg. For those people that are joining us online, it's the 24th of March at the Houghton Hotel. And for those that are here in Cape Town, it's at the One and Only. I know that there's a long list to get, they're oversubscribed. So if you don't hear back from them or you've left it too late, that's probably why. So there is a waiting list. Cool, some interesting things. So if you know much about Snowflake, they release stuff all the time. Again, given that the theme tonight is all around AI stuff, I've just chosen a couple of the features that have been updated over the last couple of weeks. So if you've used any of these features before, you may know some of the limitations, but AI Complete is a function that allows you to basically use large language models to interrogate data. And one of the challenges with that is that you couldn't actually use it with things like Word documents or PDFs. So that's now been changed. Cortex Code, if any of you have been playing around with that, it's like your internal co-pilot. So basically you can ask Cortex Code to essentially replace you as a developer, and it will go away and build loads of stuff. So your days are numbered. I would embrace the skill and be an expert in it sooner rather than later. AI Extract is another function that allows you to pull data out of documents. A really interesting thing they've added here is something called scaling factor. So if you've got documents which are really, really poor quality, or they're very, very small, it will actually scale the document up before it starts to try and extract information from it. And I'm going to give a little demo about some of these things later on. And then Cortex Search, again, if you've been using some of these features, Cortex Search gives you the ability to talk to unstructured data, but you're limited to talking to one column of data in your database. Now you can choose to talk to multiple columns, so it makes it a lot more flexible. And then finally, Semantic Views. So this is the idea of you creating a semantic model over your data and allowing you to talk to it. It generates SQL, runs the SQL, returns the results. They had challenges there in terms of being able to have multiple relationship paths. So you can think of it, if any of you have used Power BI before, where you have like these indirect relationships or relationships that are inactive. It's the same kind of concept now in Semantic Views. So for those role-playing dimensions, you can have multiple relationships to your fact tables. So these are some of the cool features that get released that you probably don't even know about. There's cool release documents page on Snowflake if you've got loads of spare time. Cool. So I'm going to give a very quick kind of intro into AI SQL functions. This is one of my an area that I love around Snowflake, and then I'm going to hand it over to Saad and his team to talk about the stuff that they do at Mukuru. But I recently did a presentation that talked to like the reasons for why this stuff is actually important. So why do you want to talk to unstructured data? Like, what's the value in it? And so this is something called the Gartner hype cycle. I don't know if any of you have ever seen the Gartner hype cycle, but it basically kind of projects different technologies through a life cycle of hype, essentially. So you get all this cool tech here at the beginning that everyone's really excited about. It's going to change the world. And then essentially it goes through these different cycles of overinflated expectations. It's going to do my job. Everything's going to, the world's going to fall apart. So actually people realizing that it's got limitations. And then it goes basically into this trough of disillusionment. Actually, the technology wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be, and I'm not going to do this anymore. But then a body of knowledge is acquired and people start using the technologies and they start maturing. And you give feedback to the people that are building all this stuff. And then you get the slope of enlightenment and you get to start understanding how the tools work and you put all the best practices in place. And so basically what they're trying to do here is project how long it takes all these different technologies to move through these various cycles. That's all really interesting, but that's not actually what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is, if you go and zoom in a little bit, what are the things in there that are to do with AI? So we've got all these different things which are kind of built on the top of this concept of AI. We've got AI agents, we've got Gen AI models, we've got decision intelligence, we've got things like Vibe coding. They all require some form of generative AI or large language model, but they're all very, very different. So when people say we want to become AI enabled, what does it actually mean? And so what you really need is an ontology, a way of actually grouping these different use cases together. So this is just my kind of view of the world. So you've got data engineering or data processing as a kind of like use case. You've got, what does that mean? You've got intelligence, so discovery and search, or using predictive models, or AI generative use cases, or conversational AI. We've got operational, so where you're starting to layer things now, so process automation or decision support or personalized intelligence. And then you've got the agentic use cases. So these are typically have some level of kind of user input and interaction. And here we're actually letting agents talk to each other and solve problems for themselves. But one of the things that happens in this is that it generates a lot of data as it goes through this process. So as we start building these things and we're using lots of data to build these capabilities, we're actually going to be generating a lot, all those conversations, all those interactions. So managing and working with all this unstructured data is really, really kind of important. So the area that I want to quickly focus on is how we do data processing. So what's some of the interesting things you can do in Snowflake with AI and large language models to actually process and work with data? And to contextualize some of this for you as well is, why is it even important? So it's projected, and I've been doing this kind of work for a long time now. So some of these numbers have been around for years. So it used to be, people used to talk about big data and they'd come out with these big numbers, and then it was complex data, but it still holds true today. Like the numbers of data or the volumes of data are growing very, very fast. So it's projected at the end of this year that in the data sphere, there's 181 zettabytes of data. So to contextualize that, if you were to put that onto DVDs, and most of you probably won't know what they are, but there's these things called DVDs. If you were to stack them up on top of each other and wrap them around the planet, they'd go around Earth 222 times. So that's quite a lot of data, okay?
Yeah.
And it's growing at roughly 25% year on year. So that volume of data is going to get exponentially bigger. But the interesting metric is how much of that data is actually unstructured data. 80% of that data is going to be unstructured, and only 20% of it is going to be structured. So it's growing at 3x faster, this unstructured data, than structured data. So there's a hidden like set of data with a load of value in it. And so, you know, some of the interesting kind of stats around like why this growth of data is, it's kind of estimated that we as humans generate every second some kind of digital interaction, whether that's we're liking something on social media, whether we're taking a photo, whether we're answering an email, whether it's something going through our bank account. You know, across the board, we're generating vast volumes of data, and the vast amount of that is unstructured. And so how do we get value from that? So we take that unstructured data, things like transcripts, PDF documents, videos, and we turn it into structured data. So we've got 181 zettabytes. It's growing at 25% year on year. 80% of it's unstructured. That's growing 3 times faster than normal data. So I think there's a real opportunity to create value from that data. So how do we do it? We do it with Snowflake's AI functions. So here's a little breakdown of some of the cool functions that are available. How many people have used these AI functions at all? Anyone? 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool, so not many. Okay, so let me give you an idea of how it works. So basically, these are SQL functions that you can basically use in a SQL statement. So you can say select so-and-so. And each of these functions has a very different job that it can do for you. So we've got functions that will allow you to extract data. So we've got AI extract, parse document, and AI transcribe. And they allow you basically to talk to documents and videos and images and extract data from them. So you can ask questions using natural language, prompt your actual large language model to return you some information. Then we've got transformation kind of functions. So these are things like summarize, translate, and sentiment. So it'll give you a sentiment score. It will translate it into about 20 different languages. Or you can take a piece of text and you can summarize it, which is actually quite a difficult thing to do whilst still retaining like context of what that piece of text was talking about. Then you can do things like AI classify. So you can pass in a piece of textual data and you can ask it to classify it for you into a category. And you can give those categories descriptions, or you can use it to help you redact information within a piece of text. So some really cool like functions to help you transform data. And then we've got things like aggregate. So we can take textual data that's in multiple rows and we can actually aggregate that textual data together and summarize it at the same time. So that's quite cool. And then we've got something called AI Complete, which is like this kind of Swiss Army knife that can basically do all of this stuff. And you can choose which large language model you want. And you can basically configure it to do a lot of complex stuff that these kind of pre-baked functions can't do. Then we've got functions that allow you to do filtering. So we can actually use a filter in a where clause essentially, but it can be a prompt that you're actually applying at the same time. We can do something called AI similarity. So we could take an image and we can ask it to compare it against another image, for example. Or you can do embeddings, which is basically vectorizing text into a set of numbers that you can then compare against each other to see if they're similar. And then we've got all these cool little helper functions. So there's one called prompt, which helps you construct a prompt, but allows you to put variables into that prompt as well. So you can pass a document or you can pass some other piece of text. And then we've got this thing called AI count tokens, which allows you to see how expensive it's all going to be. It's actually pretty cost effective. So what I want to quickly take you through is these functions at the beginning, which is something's not going so well. Bear with me. But it's these ones. The AI extract, parse document, and transcribe. Because these make it super easy for you to take unstructured data and then start getting value from it. So very, very quickly. So what does AI extract do? So it allows you basically to pull data out of a piece of text. So you can pull entities, lists, or tables. All of these different functions return you a JSON object. So you have to get really used to working with JSON in Snowflake if you're going to use any of these AI functions, because that's what you're going to get back. And then you're going to have to manipulate that JSON to flatten it out into a table of rows and columns you can work with. I'm not going to go through everything on the slide here, but these slides will make available afterwards. But you can see the kinds of documents that can work with: PowerPoints, images, HTML web pages, all good stuff like that. So here's a little video. Let's see if this will work. So here's a little demonstration. So basically, we're setting the context here. I've got a little bit of markdown here. So you can see in here, I've got some information, I've got a list, and I've got a table of results. So this is markdown text. I'm putting that into a variable, and now I'm able to use this function and basically say, cool, I want you to return the company name and who's the data hero, and I'm giving it questions. And so it's going to use those questions to basically interrogate the text and bring me back a JSON response, which has got information that it's extracted. So that's really great. It's now in a piece of JSON, but actually what I want to do is get that into rows and columns. So then you have to start using the kind of semicolon or colon like notation to basically help you navigate that piece of JSON. So from the output, go to that particular column, that particular value, and extract it. Here you can see what I'm actually returning is an array. So I'm asking it to go and look in the document and pass me an array. And you can see now I'm actually in my JSON, I'm actually getting an array there, which is kind of identified by the square brackets. And so again, like the JSON that we want to actually transpose now looks slightly different. So now we have to use this function called lateral flatten, which basically you take an input and you ask it to flatten it into additional sets of rows. So the input is this members, and then you're asking it to basically make that, transpose it from a list basically into rows. Here's the final one. So we're looking into the table now, and we want to try and extract some data from the table. So I had the quarter, the revenue, and the profit. It brings each of those back as separate arrays in my response. So you can see on the right-hand side there, I've got profit as an array, quarter, and revenue. So the data manipulation we have to do when working to try and get a table of data out is a little bit heavier. So you'll see here there's multiple like lateral flattens where we're basically passing in the JSON multiple times. And each time we're asking it to go and extract the data from a very specific part of that JSON and then basically transpose it for us. So now we get back to a table of results that we can actually work with. So very quickly, you can use AI extracts, and that's just one example. You can pass images through there as well. You can do other kinds of documents, but very quickly, you can work with 3 different types of output lists, basically asking questions and getting like scalar type responses and working with tables. AI transcribe is specific to working with audio and videos. So if you've got audio files and you want to basically extract information from those, so maybe it's a call center transcript, or if you've got videos and you want to take the audio from the video, then it just has to have the audio as kind of a separate track. You can pass those really, really quickly, and I'll show you how you can do that now as well. So this is the audio that it's going to be working with. Anyone ever worked with Notebook LLM or LM or whatever it's called? It's really cool. You can basically put loads of documents in there and you ask it to create you a podcast. So hopefully people can hear that. But I've got this really kind of synthetic American person telling me all about AI transcribe. So there's a whole 5-minute, like, I won't put you through that, but basically that's the content. And so this is how you can actually pass that. And it's so super simple that it's actually, the demo's over before it's even begun. So again, we set the context. I've created a stage, which essentially in Snowflake is like a folder that you can go and put documents into. So I've created a stage already. And in that stage, I've got a document and I've got an audio file. And I'm basically passing to this function called to file, which basically turns it into a kind of a binary that Snowflake can work with. And I'm passing it to the function. That's as complicated as it gets. And now it's going to go through there and actually transcribe that audio into a piece of text that you can actually now go and work with. So I get the audio duration and I get this long load of text. But this was actually a conversation that was happening between 2 people. So imagine, again, it's like a call center transcript is a good example. So this was a conversation between 2 people about the AI transcribe function. So what I actually want to do is see that conversation play out. So in a second, when this has done all this good stuff. So here again, I'm just extracting like the text and the duration into separate columns. So again, just pass in that. But here I've got this ability to pass in the granularity. So here I can say, actually, I want you to transcribe this, but I want the granularity of your response to be every single word that's spoken. So I'm not sure what the use case is for this particular way of doing the data extraction, but what it will give you now is it will give you a timestamp. It will give you the speaker who said the word, and it will give you the actual word that they spoke. So you're getting it down now to the lowest level of detail that you could probably get from a transcription. So we know the full duration, and we know when each of these words has been spoken by somebody. Again, I'm just showing you here how you can pass that that actual JSON response and put it into rows and columns so that you can actually start to understand it. But it's the next one, I think, which is probably the most useful, or the next 2 queries, which are the most useful. And that is the ability for you to actually see each speaker's like conversation. So again, if you're doing this with, like, let's say call center transcripts is my favorite because it's been a use case that we've worked with. You can actually then start interrogating, has the actual call center agent actually followed like standard operating procedures? Have they introduced themselves? How did they talk about particular products? What was the complaint from the customer? You can ask loads of questions about the transcript and then transpose that and make it into structured data that you can work with. So here we've changed that timestamp granularity to speaker, and now we're processing it again. So again, it's not probably the most efficient way of doing this, but I'm burning credits. So here you'll see again the total duration, and you get these things called segments. So each segment, essentially, in this instance, is a sentence. So each sentence is being returned. But as you can see here, this speaker's said multiple sentences. So again, not probably great if you're trying to kind of analyze this, that you've got these three separate different rows. So what we want to try and do is maybe combine all that together. So again, it's going to show you how you can actually transpose this, take it from JSON and actually flatten it. So again, because we've got multiple segments, we need to use this lateral flatten function to actually take each segment and pass it out. So here you can see we've got multiple rows now, each sentence that somebody spoke. We've got the start time, we've got the end time. You'll notice that the start and end times for each of the rows doesn't actually tie up. So we've got 11.538 and then 11.874. That's because people were pausing and taking a breath. So it's actually when they're actually speaking. So here what I'm doing now is there's a little technique that allows you to basically find out contiguous periods of time. And so just by using some window functions, you're able to actually group each of those parts of the conversation together. And now you can use this, isn't a Windows function, this list aggregate function. It's basically, it takes rows of data and it combines them together. So at least we're going to not burn so many credits by using this. It's a normal standard SQL function. But here now, instead of having multiple rows, we're going to get basically the turns of each speaker. And we're going to see those 3 or 4 rows that we had before concatenated into one, and we've got the start and the end time of that conversation. So now this is something you can probably go away and work with, and you can start to analyze what was the actual agent saying here. What was their response? Did they actually do something? So some cool examples. Last one, and then I'm going to hand over to Saad and his team. But AI pass documents. So the object here is to be able to take PDFs or images and actually be able to extract something. And you've got 2 different modes that you can use when you do this. So one is called OCR. So I think it's object character recognition. So basically it's kind of like how you might see the data if you looked at it. And then the other one is layout mode, which is basically going to return information in a kind of markdown format. So it's going to have some additional metadata in there about headings and formatting. So this is the document that I actually passed in there. So you can see there's headings, there's a table, there's actually an image that's been embedded in this document. And so there's actually some structure to this that's useful for us to actually work with. So again, same as before, we're going to set the context. We're going to go and check that we've got files in our stage. And then after this, we're going to go and have a look at actually extracting the data. So we're going to use the first method, which is OCR. So here we get back a string of data or a string of text, but it really doesn't have any kind of context to it. So it's just one long string. You might get a couple of kind of line breaks in there and like character breaks and stuff like that, or page returns, but not much in the way of actual kind of context as to, if this is a heading or if this is a subheading or what have you. So it's relatively readable in that format, and you can do stuff with it. But if we change it to layout mode, now it's going to kind of analyze that document and try and keep some of the context around the structure of the document. And that's really important when you want to do things like chatbots based on your kind of standard operating procedures. The headings are important. The headings have meaning. And so you can give them more meaning in terms of like when you're looking for pieces of text, you can use the headings to actually kind of make inference as to this is a piece of a document that refers to something specific. You'll notice a couple of other functions in here. So you can do page splitting. So if you've got really long documents and you only want to analyze certain pages of a document, you can go and tell it, go and look at specific parts of it. So here I've split the first page and the second page. So if I wanted to, I can basically analyze these independently. And what you will see here is that it's identified as an image embedded in this document. So in a function in a little bit later, we can actually take that image and pass it out. So here's my 2 pages, here's the content, and now you can see this is in markdown format. So I've got double pound signs there for like headings. You can see the table has been retained. And so this is important if you want to work with this later on, that you've got that additional metadata. And then finally, or it gets into the next. This is the joy of pre-recording these, that you get these awkward silences. But you get to watch this play out. I've seen this many times. Cool. And then finally, now we can actually start looking at the cool stuff. Cool. The images. So here we've got this other parameter that says extract images that you can see. So when we run that piece of code now, not only is it going to keep that layout mode, but it's also going to give me a set of images that are embedded in the document. This can be really important if you're working in financial services and you've got documents which have got embedded images in them, and you want to get information out of those images, like charts and stuff like that. Then you can use those images to basically do that kind of analysis. So here it'll tell you where the image actually is, and now you can see it's got this kind of encoded base 64 image. That's actually an image, all those words and numbers, and you can take that, and I'll show you now, and you can actually use that and actually convert it back into an image that you can kind of see or read. If anyone's ever used, again, tools like Power BI, you can do this in Power BI. You can take that that string and actually kind of visualize it. So here I've pasted it into an online thing called base 64. You paste it in there, you ask it to convert it, and it will put it back to an image. So just to prove that it really is an image. And that's basically three functions I just wanted to share with you, because I think they're the kind of entry point to kind of getting your data out of those structured, very hard to work with kind of documents, whether it's documents, images, videos, and getting it into a textual format that you can actually start doing something with it, and you can start to do some level of analysis. So here what we're actually doing is we're combining functions now. So we're passing the document, and then you can see at the very top there, we've got an AI extract. And then at the bottom here, line 174, I'm actually asking it to describe that image in detail. And so the output that I'm getting now is an actual description of the response here is actually a description of the image. And it basically has, like, the image was a picture of all of the kind of parameters that you can use. Cool. So that's everything from me this evening. I'm going to hand over now to Saad and the guys from Mukuru, and leave you in their capable hands. So. It's working, so you have to actually click on the screen.
Thanks so much, Douglas. So at the back end of our presentation, we actually have a section, well, we'll touch on what are we going to look at next in terms of evolving our solution. And that's sort of specifying the relationship path in the semantic view. We're going to look at that because Nicola and I were talking about that. And how do we sort of get the equivalent of an indirect relationship with our metrics? Yeah, so that's so thanks. That's super helpful. I'm gonna kick off. See. Wonderful. So my name is Saad Panjwani. I head up the business intelligence team here at Mukuru. Mandate is to formulate the strategy and guide the execution on analytics engineering, data warehousing, reporting, data science, and sort of bridging, working at the intersection of sort of the data and the activation of that data and decisions within the business. Today, sort of joining me, co-presenter is Nicola, a senior analyst within our team, so rockstar. And one of the things I've enjoyed most about this project, because I don't get a lot of opportunity to actually get into some coding and looking at some of the new tech, has been working with Nicola, like just the pace and I guess the speed at which we've progressed with this. Because we really started with this at the start of March. That's been great. Sean is attending, he's doing his master's and he's got a session today, so he won't make it, but he built the data model, so the traditional data model, and that's, of course, the tide that raises all boats. But before I share anything else, just a bit about our topic. So rethinking campaign analytics with Snowflake. So essentially, what part are we rethinking here? It's about what interface do we give the business to access data and explore and discover insights. And we are hypothesizing that a chatbot, a conversational AI agent that sits on top of our structured and unstructured data in the near future will accelerate learning loops. And at the moment, the launch of the pilot is imminent. And so today what we're going to share is sort of how we've formulated, how we framing the problem, the components of it, some of the lessons learned thus far in terms of putting together this technical solution. We don't yet have a lot of user feedback, but we're going to be sort of gathering that in the weeks to come. And then hopefully in a future user group or blog post, we'll share about this is how we've evolved the solution, and this is the feedback we got. Maybe it'll be a resounding success, maybe it won't, it will pivot. Right. But before we share anything further, really keen to tell you more about our business. Focus for today's session. Thank you. We're gonna speak a bit about Mukuru and our the data capability at Mukuru. Then I'll frame the problem, and then Nicola will take you through the solution. There's a demo embedded in there, as well as um, lessons learned and the approach we took. And then we'll round it off in terms of what sort of forward-looking plan in terms of how we plan to roll this out. So coming back to our business, Mukuru, that was a dated video. There's a new one coming up soon. We actually have 17 million customers, and not the 10 that was mentioned there. So essentially, Mukuru, founded in 2004, is a leading financial services platform, sort of geared towards uplifting Africa's emerging consumer. Essentially, through our products and services, be it sending money, a digital store of value, sort of capabilities to enable payments, as well as lending. We've served over 17 million customers across 250 million transactions across 74 countries and growing. So simply, we want to be there for our customers when they want to send, store, spend, or lend. And that provides a lot of context for the data team and of course the data team's outputs, then provide the scoreboard and the focus for the business so that it's a synergistic relationship. That's the amazing team here at Mukuru. Really quickly, sort of reorganized in the hub and spoke. This is not particularly new for a mature data team. I'm sure you've seen similar things within your organization. At the center, sort of the capability is the data engineering team that sort of stands up the technology and makes sure that the lights are on all the time. And then it's the analytics engineering team and analysis teams that partner with the business. So it's centralized governance and decentralized execution. Our situation at the moment, so the POC is anchored within the CRM space, and our CRM engine is effectively Mukuru's customer engagement engine, essentially turning customer journey and data signals into elevated education for our customers so they understand our products better, drive conversion, drive the habit build and usage of our products across multiple channels. And we're a key partner with the CRM capability at Mukuru. We partner with them from the perspective of providing scored lists and leads and segmentation so that we're speaking to the right customers. We partner for them from a rigor perspective on are we actually, is this actually a causal effect when we communicate with customers? Are the interventions and levers we're implementing, are they actually working, or is that seasonality or just chance? Right. As well as providing visibility into the performance. So as I mentioned earlier, the scoreboard, how well are our customers performing within the business? Are we growing, and are we retaining those customers, or is the business growth just driven by sort of new customer acquisition? And a key challenge there is the feedback loop. In order for this to work as an effective engagement engine, there needs to be a pretty quick feedback loop between the business taking an action and then they get the feedback in the data so that they can then decide, should we continue doing this? Should we start doing something else? Should we actually stop this because it's not providing, it's not serving the objective anymore? And so at the moment, there's a bit of a slow understanding of that because of the model that we currently just going to go back. That's the sound. And then to summarize, how do we provide that visibility into the business? So right now we're focused on measurement of journeys and campaigns to the business. How do we provide that visibility? Initially, so apply the dashboards and reports. So there's a dedicated report with standard metrics that we agree on with cross-functioning within the business, and that's what we use to measure. We're thinking about moving into adding a AI agent on top of that. And I'm going to share more about that just now, and that all our data is within Snowflake. So this AI agent will be sitting on top of our modeled data in Snowflake, and users can then explore it with natural language. I've been asked to speak up. Speak up. So via the reports, a user gets a report that there's always, okay, so this campaign looks like it's doing well. Why is it doing that? Or this campaign is not doing so well. Why is it not doing? Can we get a better understanding into who's driving the performance here? Can we understand after this campaign, have we generated sustained behavior? Do we retain these customers at an elevated level compared to customers we didn't speak to? And so on and so forth. And what that does is that's a request. It goes onto the sprint backlog, and then there's latency. And essentially, we're looking at an AI agent capability to sort of bridge that gap and so provide business users via chat interface access to modeled but atomic data, where they can then explore the data themselves and sort of get access to have the ability to explore the data a bit more, understand the driver metrics behind why and how, what's driving the performance of the campaign. And a hypothesis at the moment is that will accelerate learning leaps to the point where we'll actually see actions taken sooner. And then we should see that in our sort of end of day final metrics around increased monthly active users, increased average revenue per users. And those are going to be some of the metrics we use to sort of judge the success of this particular tool. Often there's a question on that. Does that mean that reports and dashboards are dead? No. They have their place to play, right? And so we see this as providing both. So reports, as well as this conversational analytics agent on top of the reports. So the reports is the system of record. That's your recurring KPIs and scorecards. It's for the long tail driver analysis, exploratory analysis that's it's hard to plan upfront for all the campaigns and all the journeys under the sun, and bake that into a standardized, governed, approved report. Essentially, the same data that's feeding the report is also going to be made available via the agent, and then the users can then ask it a bit more unstructured questions. And sometimes those questions are like, I learned this term from Douglas, are disposable. And so it opens the disposable analytics sort of window into the data. The reference architecture under all of this. So we use Snowflake as our data platform, and that serves several operational decision support and analytical use cases. very similar to, I'm sure, to many data environments, and that's we replicate data into the environment, and then we model it across various stages. And it's in this presentation layer where that serves as the starting point to feeding the semantic views and the AI agent. And so there isn't somebody who's
Someone online, I'll need you.
back to the architecture diagram. So, and the important thing about looking at the slide as well is that we don't move away from the existing sort of traditional pipeline of data processing. Yes, we're adopting several AI productivity tools, Cortex Code, Claude Code, or Cursor, whatever AI agent to support the actual writing of that code to accelerate this path in order for the data to be made available via the Snowflake Intelligence layer, but there's no going away from that. And of course, the common downside or pitfall that we've all heard about using large language models to query data is hallucinations, it's sycophantic, is it reliable? And so we've taken several steps in order to seed and bed down context within Snowflake, within the semantic layer, so that there's guardrails. So how are we thinking about evaluating whether this is a tool that we are actually comfortable putting in front of the business without loss of like a reputation? Like, hey, you're actually putting a tool, giving business a risky tool where they'll actually make wrong decisions. So we've taken several steps in order to ensure that the output is reliable. And so what's our framework? Okay, so it's across decision value and answer integrity, and user confidence and operational control. So that's our two badging matrix. We're starting off, okay, is this right? And so there's several tests we've done to check the data that the AI agent produces versus existing sources, known sources across known queries. Is it following the right path, right, in order to calculate this particular metric? So is it right? Those are the key things that I've highlighted there. The next thing is the users trust it. And so via the Snowflake Intelligence interface, users can rate directly, right? And so we can see their feedback there. And that's a core part of making this a success, that users, they use it and they provide feedback. As well as we'll run a couple of surveys on a structured cadence, because they won't be able to provide all the feedback via that interface. Thereafter, like, what's the speed with which we actually serving this answer? Do you ask a question and then you have to go make a cup of coffee, otherwise like you're just looking at paint dry. And so we're going to be looking at sort of optimizing the performance, and we've done some work there as well, looking at the cost, the failure rates, and then ultimately, is it useful? Are we getting repeat users? Are people actually finding some benefit from this? And if there's a repeat users, there's a signal there, like, okay, and then we're going to look further. Are they saving time? Are they making those decisions faster, and are those more effective? And then, is there less demand on us on the data, like our backlogs for campaign requests and insights into campaign requests? Are they thinning out? Are we working on something different? And a key point here as well is that why we need to work on ensuring it's grounded first, because we don't want to switch the, hey, BI team, give us the answer, to, hey, BI team, now validate the answer from the AI agent. So the backlog task changes. And so that's why we've spent quite a bit of time there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, just rather to focus on one point. Early on, we'll also sample several, I guess, user sessions and go through them in detail, because there's certain things that certain metrics won't tell us. And so we have to go through the prompt that the user put in, what response do they get out, plus a random perhaps generated sample, and engage with users. So it's very much sort of a new product development type of approach that we are going to go forward with, because that's the only approach we believe that will give us sort of the insights we're looking for. A bit about our users. So who do we see as the users of this agent? So it's cross-functional. It's going to be the data and analytics teams, because they often sort of frontline, first-line support getting these questions. It's going to be the CRM team as well as the power users and embedded analysts within those teams. And then later on, the broader business units. Why are we thinking about it this way? Today, the conversational interfaces don't expose as much, well, in my opinion, context and visibility and transparency into the data, and how did the agent make its decision, right? And so we believe that it is the technical staff and power users that will be enabled first, because they have an understanding of some of the raw data, and they understand some SQL or pseudo-SQL, and they'll be able to make sense how did the agent come to this answer. But increasingly, as we mature this, then it's going to be passed across into a larger group of sort of a wider variety of use cases as well as business backgrounds. So that's how we're thinking about our users. Cool. So that's what that was our sort of formulating the problem. Our problem is within the CRM space about providing insight to data so that there's faster learning loops, and we can tweak how we sort of engage with our customers. I spoke about how we're seeing sort of the two artifacts, the report as well as the AI agent, and how we're thinking about sort of rolling it out. I'm now going to pass on to Nicola, who will tell you a bit more about the solution we're actually building in order to achieve these ends.
Thank you, Saad. Okay, so before I jump into the detail, I want to just walk you through a bit about what we ended up building out for our POC. But before we understand what we built, it's important to understand that this is not just an AI tool. It's a layered reporting solution. And by that, I mean our POC consists of 3 core assets. So as Saad mentioned, we're not throwing Power BI back in the bin. Power BI will become the first touch point for our stakeholders who are trying to assess campaign analytics. It is the AI agent, Snowflake Intelligence, that supports that if the stakeholder is wanting to do some deep dive analytics, some further insight generation. And then what cuts across both of these 2 assets is our data dictionary and monitoring app. Now, this is a Snowflake Streamlit app that we've built, and this maintains sort of a data dictionary, giving the end user an opportunity to understand key components of campaign analysis. That is, things like what are the key campaigns that have been running, active ones, some of the details, what is the intent of the campaign, etc. And then, of course, it is the agent catalog. So these are the 2 core components of that app to support any user to have a bit more context to know that they can get the most value they can out of the first 2 assets. Okay, so I'm going to pause there and we'll go through a demonstration, a recording of a demonstration, just to give you all an idea of exactly what does the solution look like. And then thereafter, we'll sort of open up the hood and break down each component. I'll walk you through our practical secret sauce that we added to make sure that we're producing a reliable AI agent. Okay, so just to set the scene. So this again is for campaign analytics specifically. Let's assume I am a CRM team member and I want to investigate results of a recent Black Friday campaign that we ran across the business. Now, as mentioned, first point of call, Power BI. We've got comprehensive reports with some key metrics, standardized metrics that tell us how did the cohort of customers in that campaign perform? Did they transact? Did the transactions increase? What was the value of the transactions? How often did they transact? Those sort of details. But if I'm a stakeholder and I'm wanting to dig into some deeper business questions, that is when I turn to the AI agent. So to sort of simulate the typical engagement with Snowflake Intelligence, I've curated sort of 3 high-level prompts. If you could think of it that way. So the first one is, we're in the land of Mukuru, so we're looking at remittances. We want to establish whether there was success or uplift in that campaign. So we're going to compare pre-campaign versus post-campaign. And then we want to compare our control group and our treatment group. So sort of the treatment group being the ones that received the communication, and then we have a comparative control, sort of part of the generic sort of campaign analytics. Then we want to dig a little bit deeper. Let's do some customer segmentation analysis. Let's break those groups up based on tenure. And then slightly out of our wheelhouse of the campaign or the intent of the campaign, what indirect benefits did that campaign bring to the company? So let's have a look at cross-product usage. Okay, so before I press play, just to position what you're about to see, is I spoke about sort of 3 assets. This is going to focus primarily on Snowflake Intelligence, the AI agent that sits on top of our semantic view, that reads off of our warehouse, Snowflake warehouse. And you'll see I sort of toggle between back and forth to the app that I mentioned, that it's the data dictionary and monitoring. And again, you'll sort of see in practical terms, what does that facilitate in understanding how I need to ask questions to the Snowflake Intelligence, to the AI agent. Okay. All right. So you can see the Snowflake Intelligence. It has some sort of suggested questions. I then jump, this is our AI, this is our app. Okay, and you can see sort of 2 core components, campaign list, if I want to review what campaigns we're running, and then an agent catalog, just sort of showing a bit of detail of the data underneath. Okay, so I'm going to ask a very broad question. You'll see here, what does this agent do and what questions can I ask? Now, this is where the agent sort of self-identifies. It will tell you who it is, what are the sort of key items, key concepts it analyzes, its key areas of interest. So this sets the scene for an end user. And then it positions, maybe these are some questions you can ask and sort of tells you how to get started. Now, to jump back to our curated questions, we want to look at the Black Friday campaign. So I could ask the question, or alternatively, I'll jump to my app and I'll pluck out the particular campaign I want to look at. Now I'm giving agent context. I want to look at this campaign, and we'll go to that first sort of question we had, which is I want to see the uplift. Let's look at the uplift between SA and the DRC and look pre and post campaign. Okay, so what is happening behind the scenes? Well, there is interpretation of my intent. So the agent's going, cool, what is the metric? What is the comparison? What is the campaign context? Then it will start using business language and map that to governed data objects we've designed underneath. It then will assess an analytical path. So like, what steps do I need to take in order to answer this question that this person has asked me? You can start seeing that reasoning is generating a SQL query. And then once that's executed, it delivers some insights, not just data, but insights. And that's the critical value add with this sort of tool in campaign analytics. So we'll just give it a sec. Okay. So here's its response. Well, by design, it's pretty concise. It gives us a summary. It gives us some key metrics, compares the control and treatment groups, and then gives you a bit of interpretation. It suggests some next steps. But based on sort of the curated pathway I want to take as a CRM team member, I want to look at the tenure. But maybe I wanted to look at another dimension. Maybe I want to see by channel or something else. So in that case, again, I'm referring back to the app and having a look at the dimensions in the underlying data model. I'm having a look at, cool, what are the details that I can start prompting? I don't know what I don't know. And this is to facilitate the end user to understand the underlying data as comprehensive as they can. So here we go. I sort of ask, Cool. What's the tenure? Break that down. Treatment group versus control group. Okay, and it's going through its motions, sort of interpretation of the intent. It does mapping of business objects to governed data objects, business language to data objects. It finds its analytical path. All of that provides reasoning for it to generate a SQL query. It's executed, and we get a response. Okay, and then it breaks it down again. Similar format. And that format is very much dictated in the design, the underlying factors, which I'll take you through in a second. So there you go, breaks it down by tenure, by groupings of tenure, gives an interpretation, and then the next step. Okay, and then my final prompt, this is sort of like, this was the intent of campaign analytics, but let's look around it. So did the campaign influence behavior beyond the initial intent, beyond the remittances, like other product usage? So here I wanted to start sort of giving me sort of indirect influences that benefited company. So as that loads, I won't repeat sort of the structure. I think you get the point, but just to talk about more of the interface of Snowflake Intelligence. So you can see like a normal, like the typical AI agent, we've got plus sign, we can upload some context. You can see extended thinking at the bottom there. If we want it to do a deep, slower analysis, you can enable that, and it might take a little more time, but provide you a more comprehensive response. You sort of see campaign performance analytics. That's the agent we've developed. If we have multiple agents, the end user can toggle between them. Perhaps there's one for campaign performance and one for transactional performance, for example. And the individual has the ability to sort of toggle around that. And then sort of the last one, the top right-hand corner, agent details, you can sort of see a block there. Click on that, it sort of expands the side pane. And if you just need a refresher on what does this agent do? What is the context? What are the key questions? What does it analyze? That sort of introductory piece, it will sort of just pull that up and some suggested queries to sort of guide you. So you can sort of see there's a lot of things here we're trying to enable the end user to have as much information and guidance, trying to guide them on a pathway of analysis. I'm sure many of you have sort of gotten to a ChatGPT interface and sort of not quite known how to drive a certain conversation. So that's sort of just to facilitate that. Okay, so that's that on the demo. Okay, so now looking under the hood, we're going to ring fence maybe the next sort of few slides just to focus on the Snowflake Intelligence component. So sort of what are the key components underneath the hood here? So the first and foremost is the semantic model, or semantic view. Douglas mentioned earlier, sort of new feature of Snowflake AI, the semantic view. So that's sort of very much what we utilized in this. I sort of refer to it as the semantic model, and I'll sort of bring it up at the end why we've done so. Just some limitations in the capability at the moment, which made us have to pivot on how we designed it. And this semantic model defines sort of what is the trusted data we want to surface to the end user. Then we have the Cortex Analyst. So the Cortex Analyst decides how it is written. So it's interpreting natural language and generating SQL code as a result. And then thirdly, we have Cortex Agent. So this lastly is orchestrates the entire exercise. Okay. So practically, how did we build this? So the way that we approached it, building this agent isn't a single step. It's a life cycle. So during our build, we sort of honed in on 5 key pillars to building up the solution. The first of which is the foundation, the semantic layer. So think of this as the data. It is the business context, slotting it in that sort of first initial layer. Secondly, we have layered instructions. So this is where we have control of the behavior and the consistency of the model. Thirdly, we have quality assurance and testing. So this is where what Saad mentioned, sort of the guardrails. We get to sort of steer it in a certain direction. So to know that what it produces is trusted results. Fourth, it's this iterative development. So it's this development, test, refine process, sort of understanding sort of the additional capabilities, inclusions. It's very not so programmatic and more natural language development. So it takes some getting used to. And then lastly, post-deployment is this continuous loop. So we will, using that app, monitor how individuals interact with the agent. What are the questions they're asking? What are the gaps? How long does it take for data to be returned? So we'll monitor that. And from that, we've got an idea of how we need to improve the AI agent. So it's this continual loop to sort of get this to the most reliable point we can take it. I'm not going to dig into too much detail on this slide, but I want to hone in on two specific items. So how did we engineer the solution? So the first key item is the semantic layer. If we get this wrong, everything built on top of it is unreliable. Then the second layer is the instruction layer. And with that continual feedback loop, these are the key items we just continue to massage and refine until we sort of get a very reliable response to the AI agent. So I'm going to zoom in on that piece. Zoom in on, specifically the instruction layer. Okay, so how do we make sure that the agent thinks, decides, and responds in the way that we want it? And this is how we do it. This is how I'm going to sort of speak about the secret sauce. This is where that unique design comes in. Snowflake's very good in that you can spin up an AI Cortex Analyst and a Cortex agent quite quickly. The user interface is fantastic, and by the end of the day, you've got something running. But to really make it a reliable solution that has the right context and detail for your use case, these are the layers you need to focus on. So the first one, the semantic model, the semantic view, that's at the data level. So this is when we're introducing things like role-playing dimensions. We are enriching metadata, that is describing data tables, fields, relationships, defining how the agent must sort of handle errors, error handling. Sort of real enrichment at the core of the data. Then the next layer on top of that is tool description. So the powerful thing about the agent is you can have multiple tools, and you need to give that tool an identity. So it's sort of describing the purpose, giving that tool its purpose, and sort of telling it when somebody asks this, you must do that. When somebody asks that, you mustn't do this. So these tools sort of have this independent sort of assessment context of when it must be used and when it must be not. Now, the third layer on top of that is the reasoning. This is the orchestration layer. This is a very critical layer. This is where we are telling the agent, this is the framework of how you should query. This is how you should create your SQL queries. This is how you should execute your SQL queries. This is some additional context. So you sort of saw pre and post logic in my example. This is where you're sort of defining that, telling him what that means, how to use it in its reasoning, and so on. And then the final layer is the response instruction. This is the output. So this is telling them, I want you to frame it in this manner, and I want you to suggest this next question if the individual asks that question. So it's sort of guiding how you want the insight to be delivered. Okay, so final slide, taking a step back from the solution. What does this tell us? So through our development phases, there were a number of lessons that we learned quite quickly. Three key ones that I won't focus on the slide too much detail, but the first is data modeling matters more than AI. Second is business logic needs to live in our semantic layer. It cannot live within Power BI report. This is what we learned very, very quickly. And then simple things like naming conventions, metadata makes such a big difference. And it facilitates the AI's interpretation of the natural language. So I suppose final key principle or lesson learned is that when you're wanting to build out a reliable AI agent, it's not about the model that's being used. Don't focus on the model. It's about the data layer that you design that the AI is able to understand, reason over, and trust. And that's it. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to hand over back to Saar.
Thanks, Nicola. As I'm sure that you gathered that there's actually quite a bit of work that goes into sort of tuning, configuring, adding and seeding it with the context. You almost think like, let's say today, for an average request, it takes you 10 units of effort, right? And you're thinking, okay, now in order to make the data ready for AI, it needs another 5 units of effort, right? So that's a 50% increase in that, in just to deliver this thing via the agent. The really cool thing is that, so a lot of the context that we're providing is via natural language, right? And so leverage your other AI tools, whether it's Cortex Code, it's Cursor, it's ChatGPT, in order to seed it with all the context, all the metadata. So we found that really helpful. The Streambit app, we vibe coded that first, and then we're going to start tweaking it. We might release that vibe coded one first week, because that's when we'll have an opportunity to tweak it and get some feedback. But yeah, use the tools around that you have access to, and not just sort of the core components, but the other sort of AI tools to help you use AI to sort of develop the AI solution. In terms of, I think we're going to conclude with how we're planning to roll this out. So we've spoken about our problem, the framing within the business, how we've built it, and so, but what steps are we taking in order to gather that feedback, over what timeline? So this, I guess, can provide some guidance on, okay, what's an example of how teams are rolling this out? So we started off at the start of March, preparing our data. So we leveraged off our existing warehouse data, made a few tweaks there, but it was the majority of work, as Nicola mentioned a few times, was in the semantic view and semantic layer. So we've sort of stood up that architecture, configured the end-to-end from data in our warehouse all the way through to the interface where users will access that. And now it's about going through a continuous test and learn phase. So today, I guess we're the technical checkpoint. Well, that's what we've just called this user group in our in our path to rollout. In essence, by next week sometime, we'll have done a lot more of the technical testing, the performance. Does it actually match our golden data set that we're using to compare the results to? So we've got a set of queries and a set of answers already that we know these answers, and so we're testing the agent against those answers in order to check if it's reliable. And then, so there's going to be quite a bit of validation there, and then sort of release it to the business. And so with this as well, so the business doesn't know, well, a large portion of the business doesn't know, how do they actually use this? Can this actually help? So this amount of work is required in order just to show them and show just people who are not familiar with a particular interface in querying data. How does this work? Because I think in terms of what our hypothesis is that we're either going to gain that user on via this interface or lose them in their first interaction. And so there's certain sort of prerequisites and reliable tenets that need to be in place. Otherwise, we're going to lose them and they're like, actually, it's not reliable, AI hallucinates or whatever. So we start off with a business demo, and then using that feedback, we tweak it before launching it and sort of provisioning access, and through a structured pilot over several weeks, evaluate whether this AI agent is actually meeting its objectives. Right? Is it reducing the volume of requests to the BI team? Is it accelerating learning loops, and so the business is able to take action sooner? Perhaps maybe are there new things? Are there net new journeys and campaigns and initiatives that the business is launching as a result of getting that data sooner? How much does it cost? And yeah, that's going to be sort of at the end, so a retrospective before we decide whether to scale it out to a larger volume of users or add in more data, so bring in semi-structured and unstructured data, or explore other use cases, so expand it. So now we start, perhaps what's also an area of focus for us is geolocation analytics. Do we add that into this agent, or do we develop a net new agent that's going to focus into performance at a geographic level? Yeah, so this is, I guess, our current belief of how this is going to roll out. Of course, we're going to find out once the rubber hits the road. Like everyone has a plan to get punched in the face. And I guess the release to users, that's the first punch in the face. And then we're going to have to weave and bob and adapt from there. Yeah, that's all we had prepared today to share with you in terms of how we're approaching a POC in order to accelerate learning loops with our customer experience engine. Yeah, thanks so much.
If anyone got any questions, because it was a lot of countries and a few of the questions. Oh, I've got questions. Yeah. Go for it. In general, when that agent, the very biggest human fashion, it was how do you handle that? So maybe searching down, maximum value, marketing, business finance, we need to bring how do you handle that? And knowing bringing the strive for rich business years, how do you handle that?
Good question. We just proof of concept purely focused on a single business unit, a single domain, campaign, analytics, marketing. So sort of immediately thinking about the semantic layer, you could sort of approach it in two ways. You build it in the data level, sort of having, I suppose, two different semantic views for each case. Just challenging because it's sort of a lot of reuse and rebuild. But have it sort of all point to the same agent. And then in the agent orchestration instructions, you define, or tool instructions, you define which tool must be used in which context. So I'm sort of just sort of shooting over the head there. So that's sort of an idea. I don't know if there's a technical best practice approach, but
I'd add to that.
Yeah.
So I guess the first step is, why are there two definitions for the same metric? Can you have a conversation with the marketing team and the finance team to align on what is our lifetime value and how we want to define it? And perhaps both teams would agree those are two different metrics, and perhaps we should give them two different names. And then that's then coded into a semantic layer at once, so that metric means single business. But maybe that's maybe initial thinking. But you can code, as Nikki mentioned, there's two different metrics. You have different names, and you can give your agent instructions. But if the user asks a particular question resembling this pattern, then they're interested in this, the marketing definition of lifetime value. If they're asking a question of resembling another pattern, then they're interested in a finance definition of lifetime value. And maybe the two are only different between maybe be a bit overzealous. Marketing is must take credit from me for a longer time period, and finance, I know, let's cap it at 6 months, and maybe another bond is being here 12 months. That's how we look at it. Okay, another question, right?
If there's one else.
It says,
I think there's one else.
don't follow, elaborate.
I see no question. He says he doesn't have. That's not question.
I see.
You mentioned earlier costs. So with regards to like making use of like AI agents and so forth, who do you give it permission to make use of? Because it requires oversight and requires governance. So where do you draw the line between who gets to use it and what oversight is being saving versus the cost? Because the oversight requires then further resources to be implemented towards governance, towards or oversight of towards government use and outcomes of those funds. So where do you draw the line there?
Really good question. So this is not necessarily a side quest, right? You do have to get the sponsorship of the Snowflake admins, the business sponsorship, whether it's the sponsorship of technical leadership, or maybe. So we started off with a much smaller version of this, right, to test it out, and then we sort of canvassed for some priority. Right now, and these are the time and resources required for this. Okay, maybe you need to get time from your Snowflake admin to set up resource monitors and set up controls or monitoring for your for cost across the various tools. Because yes, it's a bit complex to track the cost of all the AI services. They are recently released account level reviews that make that a lot easier. So I guess the short answer to all of that is it's not really a sort of side quest that we suddenly can start off independent. If you wanted to reach some meaningful scale in your business, you must canvas and get the buy-in of the various stakeholders within the decision makers in each space. I think the chair's put up his hand.
Makes an extension don't know if it's something that we've were able to share as a common knowledge. Do you have like an idea of what you guys are saying to run everything time with cost? Is it I don't know how many is like that user? Is it kind of like an idea?
So we don't have a request per query per user budget at the moment. We have a larger budget for experimentations, and it's we're going to, in the weeks to come, formulate exactly how much does this cost, and how is it tracking against that that budget. And the monitoring that Nicola showed, I think she showed the user-facing view because that was really the persona in the demo was a user, but the admin-facing view has a cost monitoring directly available there, and you can see that it's really easy to get started, and then you get paid from there. Okay.
Actually, was transferred in today. Change our community and in English, to nuances of assets. I'm going to use a meticulous is that's really involved in the person. How is that introduced?
So it's, off the top of my head, it's somewhere around 20 plus different languages, predominantly like European languages. If you go and look at the Snowflake documentation, it will have a lot of European languages in there. English. I don't think there's an American English, it's just English. But we've tried it with Afrikaans and a couple of other more kind of like local languages. It does a pretty good job. So I mean, like out the box, it does quite well. Again, it's the same kind of thing as Sod's going through. Like when you're going and doing these things, it's about experimentation and going and seeing what's the limits of using particular models. So that particular function, that AI transcribe function, that's basically built using Snowflake's own Arctic large language model. But if that's not any good, then you can use other large language models, or you can go and use you can go and stump up your own kind of model in a kind of container service. So there's loads of different ways to get around the constraints of its ability to transcribe like particular languages. But we've found it's worked relatively well. Like, we're doing a proof of concept with a customer in South Africa right now doing exactly that. And like the results are pretty accurate. I had a couple of questions. So sorry, Captain.
Do you see the world started second? Going on in April. This kind of thing before the goal with the business on the processes, the definitions, and getting the stakeholders buying what they expected from the.
So the big thing is that we're building this on top of our existing campaign reporting. This is for additional exploration because we launched we upgraded our CRM recently, and there's several more journeys going. We're like, hey, we want to be able to, the amount of sort of demand, there isn't enough supply and capacity to answer this question. So that was part of the basis for these, let's explore an AI agent satisfying these requests. And so we had that data model, the traditional sort of extracted from our source system is model available in our warehouse. We knew the definitions of that already. So we're not starting from a net new place where we've got to source the data first and then define all the rules. And that's how we can move within a month.
Yeah.
While we're doing all sorts of, while we're delivering other work, sort of build an AI agent platform.
I had two questions for you. So did you choose at the outset a particular model to use for your agent? So from the different large language models, have you chosen a specific one or found one that works better than others? And the second part of that question was, what tools did you actually build then?
To answer the large language selection, at this stage, we kept it at auto.
Okay.
So based on the prompts, it sort of decides which to use to answer the question. But we do have in that rollout plan sort of experimentation or capability testing of the different language models.
Okay.
And sort of considering a bit of an A/B test, like what, it's a difficult thing to test, as you can imagine, because it's not, it's a source system and this is the value, you're either on it or you're not on it. And it goes along the lines of, the extended thinking. What capability does that actually bring? Is there true value in that capability, as well as context finds? Sort of those little tweaks are available, but we've sort of just gone with sort of the default, the sort of auto pieces for now, but it's definitely on the road.
And what functions did you build? Like, are you passing it stored procedures or UDFs, or is it all just Cortex Analyst, like Semantic Views, or what do you?
At this point, so we've got two phases in the POC. At this stage, Semantic View, we're just sort of modeling our data quite traditionally, using transactional customer data from our marks. But sort of the second phase of the POC is ultimately we want to build a sort of customer segmentation cohort builder. And that would be a stored procedure and a tool you'd model in the agent. So when you're wanting to do a selection of 100 customers who've done this particular behavior, which we then pass either further downstream or sort of the CRM tool that Scott mentioned, that gives that sort of self-service element to our campaigns team, our marketing team. And we're not relying on a data analyst to sort of define criteria and a requirement, which is a 2 weeks process. The data's there, just about serving it as modeling in such a way.
Cool. Last question. Go for it.
One way this is focused on campaign analytics, is this using AI in other realms of the business, especially within the financial services and very regulated environments where some reports got overhead does have clients to your risk and compliance.
So today our risk and compliance, that's being delivered by the traditional pipeline via a Power BI interface or interfacing transaction monitoring system. or file-based data that's consumed under the system. Right? In order for us to satisfy a question from a regulatory or compliance use case, then that will require us to frame the problem in that way, and what qualities and prerequisites does that need to meet, and then we make sure that in our design, we design in a way that it satisfies and ticks those boxes for regulatory compliance. At the moment, it's for experimentation and learning use, and so we can get away with some sort of margin for error. Not that there is at the moment. I'm sure there is, but we sort of at least we know where the gas, sort of leaking gas bubbles are. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was wicked. Well done. It's come to that time of the evening. I get very excited. I hope you guys have been listening. 9 questions. We're going to mix it up this week. There are questions which require one answer, and there are questions which are multiple choice. Okay, so I will tell you, it's on the screen, which ones are multiple choice and which ones are just a single answer. Cool. If you scan this QR code, well, let me start it first of all. Hang on. Oh dear. Yeah, technical error. 'If you want to join the quiz, you can scan the QR code, and we'll start seeing all your names appearing on screen. Oh, someone's gone all Snowflake tonight. Well done, Coco. Got 26 of you. There's more than 26 of you in the room. 28, 29. There's probably about 60 people. This is the real deal. It's limited edition. It's liquid snow. There's only a handful of these in South Africa. So you've got to be in it to win it. And then when you combine it with a pad, swag. All right, I'm going to give people 30 seconds and then we're going to start. We're up to 42 users. Okay, are we ready then? Okie dokie. Okay, we're going to have 4 questions and then it's going to give you the leaderboard. We're going to have another 4 questions. You're going to see the leaderboard. And then the final question to decide the Snowflake user group for March winner of winners. Okay, let's do this. I've built it up now. Now it's paused. All right. Okay. How big is the data sphere? Just one right answer. You're going to get 15 seconds to answer the question. Let's start with the easy one. If I don't get 47 out of 47, that's right, 181 zettabytes, 95% of you. Okay, they're going to get harder. How fast is unstructured data growing? You don't know, really fast. 80% faster than structured data, or 3 times faster. Oh, we're starting to separate the wheat from the chaff. 67% of you, 3 times faster. That's correct. Okay, the third question. Which of these is an AI or Snowflake AI SQL function? Choose all that apply, so multiple choice. Well, there's a typo there at the bottom. So select the last one anyway. Okay. They are all functions. AI extract, AI complete, parse document, and transcribe. Which function would I use to extract data from a video? AI extract, AI complete, parse document, or AI transcribe? Cool, 58% of you. So now, halfway through, let's find out where we're at. Yo, Camille. I feel really bad now because I forgot to mention you're rewarded for speed. Okay. Okay. But there's all to play for. There's all to play for. Okay. So now the next 4 questions are around Saad and Nicola's presentation. So everything Mukuru now. So let's see if you were listening. Which of these are Mukuru products or services? Choose all that apply. Can you send money, buy airtime, buy electricity, or pay for your DSTV? Choose all that apply. Take this back to your marketing team. And the answer is, oh, look at that. Solid. That marketing team will be very happy with that. Oh, well done. Who are the current users of the Snowflake Intelligence solution? Current users. Again, choose all that apply. CRM team, board business users. I think it's only one, actually, sorry. Data analytics staff, everyone at Mukuru. I'll go and check your answers. That's right, data analytics staff are the current users. Okay, question number 7. What products are Mukuru using for their campaign analytics solution? So what tooling were they using? Choose all that apply. Power BI, Snowflake Intelligence, Tableau, or Streamlit. That's right. They're using Power BI, Snowflake Intelligence, and Streamlit. Okay, the final Mukuru question. Which of these are instruction layers in their Cortex agent solution? Semantic model, tool description, orchestration, response instruction. This is a great slide by Nicola. Choose all that apply. And the answer is all of them. Okay, so let's see where we end up after round 2. Oh, and the leaderboard has changed. Huh? Okay, This is the final question, and if you're and I'm not gonna give you a hint. It's a trick. It's not a trick question. It was in the video. If you were paying attention, you would have picked up on this. Final, the tiebreaker, the one that's going to decide this, is coming up now. Which English football team does Mukuru sponsor? That's coming from an Everton fan. There we go. Crystal Palace. Cool. Okay. So the champs of champs.